Hey everybody, it's Professor Snart here. All right, so we are moving forward in our English 1102 online course. Again, in that 8-week format, we tend to move really like literally twice as fast as we might in that more extended 16-week format. So there's always something on your plate to do, whether it's moving ahead to the next unit or doing any sort of secondary stuff for a unit that's passed, like replies to a discussion board, which we have in almost all of our units. So if we look at our due date system again, I am recording this on Thursday, October 26th. So you would have finished all the main work for Unit 2, where we went back into our portfolios and sort of defined or translated our English 1102 course objectives. So that main work was due that first due date. And now since there's a reply component, you have a couple of days, right, buffer between when that work is supposed to be done and when you can go in and reply to people. And now, of course, keeping in mind that if enough people are done the assignment, before this due date, you don't have to wait until the last minute to go in and then do the replies. You can do them anytime there's enough stuff there that's been done by other students to reply to. Okay, so now we're into, again, the situation where you're finishing this part up, but really also should be looking at Unit 3 and starting the work that will be due for our next main due date. So all the main work, main posting stuff in Unit 3, which is Tuesday, October 31st. So again, you have to get used to sort of being in this space, right, this work, but also this space, kind of at the same time, and really balancing that and managing your time effectively. The purpose, like you might have realized already, is to have this double due date system so that everything isn't due, let's say, on the Tuesday, where if so many people are waiting to do the main work, it really hamstrings folks who are trying to do replies because they're waiting and waiting and waiting. So we have, even in our kind of condensed time frame, this split between when main work is due and then when replies to that main work are due as well. But it also means that you have to have sort of 1 foot here, potentially, and 1 foot here, which is what we're going to look at today. So looking forward then to our coming units, it's important to note that after we've done some introductions, we kind of did our first formal writing assignment, we now move into really what is the main material in the course, which are these series of units that are actually tied together. And I've sort of labeled them, stage 1, stage 2. You can call them whatever you want, but you'll see how they're all linked together as we move through them. So it's going to culminate then in this you writing and sending a professional email, which is not maybe like the most traditional kind of write a research paper type thing, but all of the same skills are involved, and I think it's a really potentially practical like real world life skill. So we don't just want to do things in 1102 that help you tick off boxes and pass 1102. We want to do that, but also actually make you a more effective writer in the real world. So the professional email, in all the forms that it might take in the real world, I think is a really kind of applicable type of assignment. So that's what we're working towards. The first step, though, is what we call the fine print. So this is stage 1 of this new writing project that we're into, and kind of the major one for the course. Okay, so as always, we have a system set up here that is a discussion board, right, which means that you'll see the assignment itself embedded in here, and I'll walk us through a little bit of this. And then, of course, there's always that reply portion. So again, main work, right, is due on that first due date, replies due by the second due date. Okay, so what we're going to do here is look for examples of the fine print in the real world, in your real world. So you don't just want to Google the fine print or something like that. You want to find something that actually applies to you. And you've probably heard this term before, and sometimes the fine print is literally like the really, really tiny font in a contract or some important document that you've signed your name to, or you have implicitly agreed to by using an app or using social media or stuff like that. That's called the end user license agreement, or EULA, it's sometimes referred to, right? So it's all the fine print that surrounds us every day, but we hardly ever pay attention to. So the example that I found really kind of funny but alarming at the same time is my DuPage Credit Union debit card has this really funny line on the back of it, kind of the fine print, right? It says, this card is property of DuPage Credit Union. Well, okay, except that it's in my pocket. And then the last part, and its surrender may be required at any time. Like someone could just, from the credit union, could like come into my office right now and demand my card. It's laughable, and it probably would never happen, right? But what the heck does that fine print actually mean? So that's the basis for our writing assignment, is finding some piece of fine print in your own life, whether it's like on some sort of card like this, or in a contract of some kind, in your cell phone, agreement, your TV, internet agreement. We're really surrounded by this stuff all the time, but we hardly ever pay attention to it. So the idea then is to find something that's kind of yours, right? That's fine print that you're actually bound by, even if you didn't really know it up till this point. And then ultimately we're going to investigate like what that actually means. Could somebody clarify that for us? For this particular assignment, right, the stage 1 phase, it's really just about discovery. It's about finding some fine print in your own life that you can use and you want to know more about. Like, what does this actually mean? What are the consequences? Why does this have to be on the back of my card? Like, what thing does this prevent somehow? I don't even know. But that's the idea, is that I would ultimately reach out to somebody like at the credit union and find out. Okay. So again, that's all this part, right, that I just talked about. Your assignment is to identify some fine print that you don't get, but that is in your actual life. So again, don't just Google something. You got to find something that's really yours. Now we're going to go back to our, let's see, where are we here? All right, here we go. Go back to your portfolio page, build a new, or your site, build a new page within that site. We can call it the fine print project or whatever, right, our next major writing assignment. And now what you're going to do is really just like explain to us what that fine print is. In this case, I was able to kind of grab an image of it. It's not terrific, but at least you can sort of see. And then if I were doing this assignment, I would provide this image, but also probably I would type out the text of the actual fine print that I'm interested in, especially because in this case, it's really short. It's like a sentence or two. Okay, let's see, where were we? Oh yeah. Okay, right. So describe the fine print you plan to investigate. Obviously, you're not going to choose an entire contract or end user license agreement or anything like that. So just find a particular sentence or two or a paragraph that you just, like you read it and you're like, really? They could come and just take my card right now? What does that even mean? Provide the actual text. Explain to us why this caught your eye. Was it sort of alarming? Is it just written in such a way that it is totally impenetrable? Right, that it confuses you, and it sort of begs the question, like, is it intentionally written that way so we don't really understand what it's trying to do? And then you're going to do an initial guess here, some initial research, not a guess, some initial research about an actual point person, a point of contact at whatever organization, like in my example, it would be the DuPage Credit Union, that I could reach out to. We're not going to do that reaching out just yet, but we want to identify, right, someone who's publicly on the web as a point person for like a customer service agent or a help number. And again, ideally we want a person, so we're not just going to say I'd contact the bank or Facebook or some huge entity. We kind of want to do some digging for an actual like person, ideally a human, but if or when we don't find that, that's part of what we're trying to uncover here, is like how the fine print works and then how it's protected from us finding out like what the heck it even means. So that's the main assignment, is just sort of discovering some fine print you can work with and then explaining it to us and then doing some research about, if you wanted to find out more, and you will for future units, who could you contact? And if your initial research reveals that there's nobody to contact, report that for now, but then we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper as we move through our subsequent units, because ultimately, this is where this is all leading, we're going to try to send a professional email. We're going to write and send a professional email to a point of contact to try to find out like what this fine print actually means. and why it's in place. Like, what is it protecting the company or us from ultimately? Okay, so that's the main assignment, right? We have the reply component again. So you're doing the assignment in your portfolio space and just posting the URL for us just to collect them all again in a nice convenient place. And then to reply, you're visiting those URLs, you're looking at people's sites, and then just sort of replying to what they've discovered. Is it like yours? Is it unlike yours? Is it totally surprising? Are you maybe bound by the same fine print without even realizing it because you have the same cable provider, or you use the same app that has the same end user license agreement, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and so just to wrap things up then, how this will play out is we have our initial kind of discovery phase here, right, in Unit 3. We then have a set of student conferences set up that you should click into now and schedule. So that gives us individually the opportunity to talk about, like, what's the fine print that you found? Could you find a contact? How are you going to go about sort of like the rest of this assignment? We can meet virtually, we can meet face-to-face. You'll see here that there are some times set up, right? Kind of spread throughout the day, but it's limited, I get that. And obviously, if none of those times work for you based on your course schedule or life schedule or work schedule, then you just need to let me know and we'll try to do something a little bit different. But I'm going to say, don't wait until basically like Wednesday, November 8th to contact me, because that leads me to believe that you really haven't paid attention to this until the last minute. And so, well, of course all the times are taken. And then we're sort of scrambling to get a conference set up. So it's really important that we have this one-on-one, even if it's just like a 10-minute conversation. It's a really valuable 10 minutes within the scope of our entire, what would be a 16-week course. We condensed it to 8, but it's a really important 10 minutes so that you're confident about what you're doing, and that we do this early kind of check to see that you've got some fine print that makes sense to work with, and then how you're going to proceed with the rest of it. We'll pop in really quickly here. The professional email assignment, right? We start actually writing the thing itself, and then ultimately it gets some feedback, and we end up sending it. And then we reflect on the feedback, and then we're done. So we move really quickly. So we're just now getting into the main, meat or the main content for our course. So it's really important that you're understanding our due date system, getting into a rhythm of, finishing up replies, but moving into the next phase, and really ready to dedicate the time it takes. It's flexible time, but it's not no time, right? Dedicating the time that it takes to be successful in the course. Okay, so read carefully, right? Take your time. Trying to think of anything else. I can't. So if you have any questions or concerns, by all means, you can reach out to me. But we really are getting into sort of like the main part of our course, so it's time to really get in there.